maybe not in this conversation. You talked about money being the incentive, that it's become the only incentive throughout the financial industry and actually in our society for a lot of different people and a lot of different businesses. How did you avoid that money was the only incentive? I mean, personally, and how do you know how much is enough? You could have been a billionaire yourself.
Well, that's what everybody says. I don't know if that's true or not.
Well,
I mean, Vanguard is certainly worth 10 or 20 or $30 billion in the abstract, but since you're making no profit, it's not worth anything, right?
Right. But personally, how did you pull back from just going for the money and wanting to have a values-based money?
Well, I really don't want a lot of credit. Don't want a lot of credit for that. I had an opportunity to, after getting fired from Wellington, to build a new kind of company, and the only way I could see to do it was to take over the Wellington funds. And since it was a very big political struggle, to let Wellington for a while continue to manage the funds and distribute the funds. Some of that lasted to this day, Wellington Fund, for example. We did away with the distribution months later, year later, and did away with their management of other funds when they didn't do a good job, and kept them when they did do a good job, and leaned on them fees. And we pay Wellington Management Company less than a basis point for running our Ginnie Mae fund. And I didn't know what they do with all the money, to be honest with you. I mean, it creates a huge amount of money in dollars at 1 basis point. You imagine what I think about 50 basis points for a money market fund, which Franklin charges or something like that. So it just grew as an idea, and my argument to the directors was the same as it would be today. They were directors of the Wellington Funds, and I'd been fired by the directors of the Wellington Management. I said, you shouldn't let somebody else fire your chief executive. And I had some allies on the board. I never picked any of them. And my Boston friends had put some allies on the board, and they did pick them. And the board was quite evenly divided, but it was quite clear that I needed a really dramatic idea to make this work, and that was to mutualize. To say, you'll never be in this position. The funds will run their own affairs. And so it grew from there, but this was when we were $1 billion. That's the fund shareholders' $1 billion, not mine. If I hadn't done that, probably couldn't have made the sale. I mean, they didn't want two managers out there doing the same thing, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. So did someone walk in and say, I want you to decide whether you want the $26 billion or do you want that's Ned Johnson's fortune, or do you want to just go ahead the way you are? That never happened. We just kind of grew into this, but it never bothered me. I mean, I was nicely paid. Not by the standards of Wall Street, but by any other. I mean, I made so much money, I'd be embarrassed in the standards of, normal America. And I'm not a spender anyway. I don't care that much. I dislike going into stores. If I have to buy something for myself, it's much worse than buying something for somebody else.
Yeah, I agree. So how do you know how much is enough? I mean, how do you personally?
Well, I think if you have a satisfying life, would another couple of bucks hurt? Probably not. I don't think there's a quantitative answer to that. You certainly want. I mean, I think most people would want to first make sure their wife is taken care of, or husband. Second, and make sure their children receive, as Warren says. I'm not sure he does this. Receive an inheritance that. Large enough to let them do anything they want, but not so large that they can do nothing. And I don't think he could possibly live up to that, because if you had, say, $5 million in inheritance at 5%, well, you're not going to get 5% today. Call it 3%. That's $150,000 a year. That's enormous. If you inherited $1 million, that's $30,000 a year. You can do nothing on $30,000 a year. You may not want to. So, but that's kind of a decent principle. And since none of us does anything by ourselves in this world, you certainly want to leave a nice amount to charity. And that's greatly facilitated or encouraged by the tax law. People would say it doesn't matter. I think you're just stupid. But I'll leave a substantial amount to charity, a little foundation of mine. And that's about that. And so guess you'd have to say that I don't have to worry about money anymore, because if I spend more than I should, charity will get less, or the kids will get less, or my wife will get less.
That's funny.
But I don't care for spending.
Yeah. No.
And not that I don't have an indulgence here and there.
Yeah.
What are your indulgences?
Well, I'd have to let me think about that, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and just on a final note, I mean, what would you say to people developing businesses now, and in terms of how to maneuver through a world where money is the greatest incentive, but really where we should get back to our roots, because that inevitably fails us? How do you combine money and values going forward in a business?
Well, I think the answer to that is, I guess, surprisingly easy. And that is, if you're contributing value to society, I don't see why you should be limited in how much money you have at all. I don't begrudge it to Bill Gates. I begrudge a little bit his operating under an antitrust law that never contemplated, selling someone a piece of equipment that all this, like Gillette razor blades. It's as if you had to buy your razor blades from Gillette the time you bought the blade, and you don't have to do that. But so to capitalize on, if you will, a loophole in the antitrust laws. But I don't begrudge that to him. I don't begrudge it to Steve Jobs. They've created great value for society. And other people have done that too, a lot of other people. And take whatever you want. Go public, do whatever. What I don't like is basically a culture where if you gamble a lot and win, you get paid as much as the guy who creates all that value. And all that gambling clearly creates no value. It actually turns out to create negative value, because there's a loser and there's a croupier. If it was just a winner and loser, it would be zero. But with the croupier in the middle there, it creates negative value. So, a wise man once said that money will buy you anything in life that is totally unimportant.
That's right.
That's exactly right. I'm writing it down.
And so, a lot of it's attitudinal. I mean, every once in a while I get a little bit jealous, envious maybe, of what other people have. But it doesn't last long. I think it wouldn't be human if I didn't.
Yeah. So, in closing, you think that what's the personal responsibility of everybody in business? Do they have one to the outside world, to the exterior world?
I think all of our personal responsibility is a ability to leave everything we touch a little bit better. Whether it's a family, whether it's a community, whether it's a corporation, whether it's society. And if we can do that, and everybody does it, we're going to have a great world. And even if the majority of people do it, we're going to have a great world. And, I guess that's the fundamental principle.